The Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission, the Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, September 12, 2018 is now called to order. Mr. Paulson, will you call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Badami?
Here.
Commissioner Birch?
Here.
Commissioner Janoff?
Here.
Commissioner Hanson?
Here.
Vice Chair Hudis?
Here.
Chair Kane?
Here.
And Commissioner O'Donnell is absent.
Oh, dear. I would ask that everyone stand and join Vice Chair Kudis in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Town of Los Gatos strongly encourages active participation in the public process, which is a cornerstone of democracy and essential to the Planning Commission conducting its business on behalf of the Town Council and citizens of the town. There are several ways for a member of the public to participate in deliberations of the Planning Commission. Prior to a commission meeting, written comments concerning agenda items may be submitted to staff. They are always welcome and helpful. At meetings of the Commission, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. During verbal communications, an individual may speak on any topic not on the agenda, and any member of the public may speak during the public hearing of an item that is on the agenda. If you wish to address the Commission tonight, please complete a speaker card located on the back of the benches where you are seated. Turn the card into a staff member, and please print your name clearly. In addition to their service on the Planning Commission, members of the Commission serve on several town committees. We have at least one report tonight. Commissioner Badami.
The Conceptual Development Advisory Committee met earlier this afternoon, and we discussed two items, one of which was located at 100 Los Gatos Saratoga Road at the corner of University, and it was a review of plans to convert 6 existing apartments to 6 residential condominiums in an existing mixed-use building on property zoned O for office. And it was met very favorably by the committee members. The second item was not met so favorably, and that would be a preliminary review of plans for 15300, 15330 Los Gatos Boulevard, otherwise known as Ace Hardware, to demolish an existing building and construct a 2-story medical office building with below-grade parking on property zoned C1. The building size was about 80,000 square feet, and it would, again, consist of medical use. We had, by Chair Kane's count, 672 pieces of correspondence opposing the project. The chambers were absolutely packed. We have never seen anything like that, at least since I've been a commissioner. And again, it was not met favorably by the committee members.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hudis, did you have a report?
Yeah, I don't believe this was covered because I believe the last meeting was canceled. So there was a Historic Preservation Committee meeting on August 22nd, at which there were several items. 33 Walnut Avenue requested comments on proposed modifications to the front porch, the pre-1941 property, and those comments were provided, as were comments and review provided on 25 West Main Street, where the applicant was looking to make exterior modifications and an addition to a historic building. And then also 16940 Roberts Road was considered, and approval was given to remove a pre-1941 property from the resource inventory.
That meeting was back in August?
Yes, August 22nd.
That's pretty historic.
Yeah. Yeah.
We now come to the verbal communications portion of our meeting. Members of the public are invited to address the Commission on any item not on the agenda. For anyone who tends to speak, I ask that you come up to the podium, adjust the microphone, and speak directly into it. State your name and address for the record. In all fairness to those who want to speak, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any cards? Ms. Jan Murray? Let's wait till we get to the mic. When the yellow light comes on, it means you have 30 seconds left. When the red light comes on, it means your time has expired.
Game show. Okay, hi, I'm Jan Murray at 104 La Swain Court in East Los Gatos, and I wanted to speak to you about the construction hours of the town and their consistency with the health and well-being of residents in the area. When you have construction hours, my understanding is in Los Gatos, they're every day of the year, holidays included, Saturdays, Sundays, and in our neighboring towns, they aren't, at least as far as I can tell from the internet. And I have some samples here for you of the hours of the other towns. So I respectfully request that the town of Los Gatos revise its construction hours and limit them to 6 days per week and cease having them on city holidays. My proposal would be 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, no construction on Sunday, and no construction on city-designated holidays. This would be very consistent with neighboring towns, similar to Monte Sereno, Saratoga, San Jose, Campbell, Sunnyvale, and Los Altos. And I have some materials here just showing you what I found on the internet, at least. And that's really all I wanted to ask, was for a little bit of sanity and peace and quiet, and kind of a little privacy from having just the variety of people who need to come to construction sites and make noise and creep around by your fence line doing constructive things. But as a resident, it would be nice to have a little bit of privacy and a little bit of quiet, at least guaranteed a few days a year.
Do you have notes or a report that you could submit to staff?
I have
Thank you.
my own personal notes.
Okay. And we may have a question for you.
It's actually to staff, but on the
Okay.
same topic, but I'll wait till she gets back to the podium.
We have a question for staff.
So right now, the hours of construction are currently in our conditions of approval. Is it easier for us to do this on a case-by-case basis to adjust the construction hours, or would it be easier to do some type of process to make an adjustment within the overall conditions of approval to potentially take in the speaker's request?
So historically, we've had certain applications where neighbors have asked for modified hours of operation. Currently, the town code regulates hours of operation. It's not just conditions of approval. To modify that would require a town code amendment.
Okay.
Current hours are 8 to 8, Monday through Friday, and 9 to 7 on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays.
Great, thank you.
And could I comment for a minute? It's difficult for subcontractors to know when they go from town to town or project to project what the hours are. They, at least where I live, they always tend to show up early and at a minimum have meetings. Typically they have trucks idling, big old pickup trucks with really loud engines, or the cement trucks. And so if the hours aren't super clear and relatively consistent, you end up with constant non-compliance that may or may not be intentional. Does that make sense? So that's one of the issues. But I would love to have it for the project that's by my house for me, but I feel like it can be confusing for the subcontractor.
Commissioner Hudis.
I had a question for staff. What would the mechanism be for the town to consider construction hours, whether it's in conditions of approval or as a change to existing policy? Would that be something that would come from the Planning Commission to the council, or would it be something the staff would bring to? What would be the mechanism for considering something like that?
So the mechanism would be for a specific project, as it's going through the process, then you can modify those conditions and put specific conditions for that project in the conditions of approval that may vary from the current town code. Otherwise, town code, construction hours, generally, that's something that is going to be a staff resource issue, and so generally those are brought up at the end of the year when we're looking at setting strategic priorities through the town council. So I'll talk to the town manager and let her know that this item came up, and then the council can consider that at the end of this year, which is when they typically do their strategic goals setting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray.
Okay. Can I ask for clarification?
Yes?
Did you say that it could go in the conditions of approval even though the town ordinance is different, or it can't? I didn't understand that.
It can, but it has to be prior to the approval of the application, so it wouldn't help in your instance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We move now to the consent calendar. Items on consent may be acted upon by a single motion, but before the Planning Commission acts on the consent calendar, any member of the public or the commission may request that an item be removed. Tonight, we have one item on consent. That's item number 1, approval of the minutes of the August 8th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Do we have a request to pull the item, or is there a motion to approve? Yes, Commissioner.
So moved?
I have a second. We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Passes unanimously, 6-0. What? We have an abstention. Pourquoi?
I was not in attendance at that meeting and didn't have a chance to view the record, so I am abstaining from that one.
Thank goodness, the minutes passed by the slimmest of margins. We move now to the public hearings portion of the meeting. But before we do, I need to announce my recusal on item number 2 on the agenda. The project is located within 500 feet of my office, and that means I must recuse myself. For this reason, Vice Chair Hudis will now take over the meeting. And I bid you all a fond farewell.
Thank you, Chair. We're now moving to public hearing portion of the agenda on item 2, which is 15475 Los Gatos Boulevard, Architecture and Site Application S18-032, requesting approval for construction of exterior alterations to a commercial building on property zoned CH, otherwise known as McDonald's Building, and it is APN 4241965. Property owner is Drew Sanchez, McDonald's USA LLC, and the applicant is Mike Yao. The project planner is Mr. Khan. First of all, may I have a show of hands from commissioners who visited the property under consideration? Any disclosures? Okay. Mr. Khan, I understand you'll be giving the staff report this evening?
That is correct. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Vice Chair. Before you tonight is a request for approval of an architecture and site application for exterior alterations to a commercial building located at 15475 Los Gatos Boulevard. The property is located on the east side of Los Gatos Boulevard between Gateway Drive and Los Gatos Almaden Road. The parcels surrounding the subject property are zoned commercial highway. The proposal was reviewed by the town consulting architect, and the report can be found in Exhibit 5. The applicant has also provided a line-by-line response to the consulting architect's report, which can be found in Exhibit 6. A materials board is also provided that can be available for your review. Staff finds the proposed design complies with the commercial design guidelines and recommends approval of the architecture and site application, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Are there any questions of staff from any commissioners? Commissioner Badami.
Is it possible to have the materials board passed around to the commissioners? Because I understand there was a change to the paint color, and I'd like to see
Yes, it can be
that.
passed around.
Okay. Commissioner Hanson?
I just wanted to check the drawings that we have, Exhibit 8, is the most current drawing reflecting any changes they made from the consulting architect's report, which was in May, to the response that they have, and there's no further updates. This is the most recent thing that the town has received,
Right, so Exhibit 8.
reflecting what this would look like.
Right, this would be the most recent submittal reflecting the changes from the consulting architect's recommendations.
Okay.
Commissioner Badami?
Was this particular building site ever subject to our commercial design guidelines, or did the building pre-exist?
The building definitely pre-existed in relation to our current commercial design guidelines. Whether they had them decades ago, I could not confirm or deny.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions, then we will move to the applicant. The applicant, Mr. Yao, I believe, will be speaking. Come up and please adjust the microphones so you can speak directly into it. And your name and address, please. And you have, I believe, 10 minutes to address us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Yao. I'm from Core Stays Group, architect for McDonald's. Our proposal proposes to freshen up the building's architecture while keeping the town's commercial design guidelines. Exterior modifications include replacement of the existing mansard roof with new parapet wall, addition of new trellis canopies, new stucco finish, and new entry arcade. These are depicted on the color renderings, elevation drawings, and material board provided to the planning staff. To encourage the unique Los Gatos scale and character, the building's entrances and windows are proposed with trellis canopies. The canopies function as shade, but also provide pedestrian scale quality to the architecture. Like the third accent walls, the canopies provide architectural relief from the facade. To support the diversity of styles in the neighborhood, the design combines a variety of complementary materials like brick, metal, and stucco. These materials are used in the architectural elements like the canopy, accent wall, and wainscot. The simple massing, clean lines, and neutral colors are compatible with local architecture of Los Gatos and do not impose franchise architecture. The standard McDonald's design has been adapted to complement the existing brick wainscot that will remain. The brick material is key in unifying all four facades, as well as tying the building architecture back to the character of Los Gatos. New outdoor seating with integrated shade structures are also proposed to replace the existing covered patio. This encourages human interaction and activity in the area. The design of the outdoor furniture aligns with the design of the building, as the tables, seats, and shade structures have similar clean lines as the proposed building exterior and complements the gray palette of the building. Site improvements include replacement of any landscape in poor condition or that appears to have been removed, and provision of an accessible path of travel to the front entry of the building.
Thank you. You do have some remaining time, but you'll also have another opportunity if you'd like.
All right.
So let's go to questions from the commission. Are there any questions for the applicant? Oh, I'm sorry. First of all, I should say, are there any questions from the public on this? Any comments from the public on this?
We don't have any cards.
No cards. Good. Okay. So go ahead. Commissioner Janoff.
Yes, thank you. This is a very stark, sort of blocky architectural design, which is quite a bit different from the surrounding shopping center, as well as other commercial properties along Los Gatos Boulevard. Did you consider any alternative designs that were maybe somewhere between what the current architecture is and that presented?
Actually, the intent of the design is actually to provide, like I said, a simple massing. I know that there are a variety of existing architectural styles surrounding the building, but the idea was not per se to mimic what's around, but to provide a design that is neutral with simple massing and clean architectural features like clean roof lines, as well as the architectural trellis canopies. So that it complements rather than clash with or mimic architecture around it. In order to tie it around the existing buildings, we propose to keep the brick wainscot, like I mentioned, because really it gives it material variety, and it relates back to some of the buildings along Los Gatos Boulevard.
So just a follow-up question, do you have anything to present to us tonight other than the flat elevations of the building? It's hard to get a sense for whether there's any articulation in the design and just the sense of flatness versus...
Yeah,
dimension?
I don't. However, I can address the flatness. What we did to provide relief from the relatively flat facade is to have an accent wall that is furred. It is furred about 4 to 5 inches off of the main facade, as well as it goes up to the main parapet line about 16 inches to kind of make it prominent, as well as the trellis canopies. I know based on the flat elevation doesn't look like it, but it projects out 3 to 4 feet from the main facade, so it gives it kind of a three-dimensional quality. That also gives it a pedestrian scale to give the architecture a little bit of interest, as well as we propose an outdoor patio ceiling that has integrated shade structure that is similar to the canopy trellises that are mounted to the building exterior, so that the architectural language is the same.
Okay, and just one last question. Can you tell us the height of the existing building and the height of your proposed structure?
Yeah, it's currently at 16.1, and we're proposing the top of the the accent feature wall at 19.4.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Badami?
Following up on Commissioner Janoff's review of the building being somewhat stark, the paint color also makes it look stark to me. It looks industrial. It doesn't look like someplace to have a Happy Meal at and be happy. In fact, it screams medical at me because we have so many medical buildings in that area. So with the paint chip that we just saw, is that the lighter palette that you chose after Larry Cannon, the town architect, made a comment about the paint color? Is this the lighter, or did you consider even creamier palettes per his review on page 5, for which he's got these beautiful buildings that are white and creamy in color that are very warm and welcoming?
Right, that's the latest and greatest color scheme, that is the light palette that we're proposing to address the consultant architect's comments. And like I mentioned, we're trying to provide a neutral color palette, so not to clash with anything around, because there are a variety of colors around the buildings from in the site. So we'd like to have it neutral and not to be the same as anything around the building.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
I'd like to add on to the question about the colors.
Yeah.
The consultant specifically said, consider a different color than gray. And although you might have changed the color, unless I'm like colorblind, that still is gray. And if you look at the buildings around there, and also if you kind of go down the street, like for example, the complex that has Panera Bread in it, that's in a more beige, cream, warm kind of color versus this. So, I mean, when the consultant recommended to go different than gray, why did you not do that?
It's actually, it's not really gray. It's has a shade of gray, but it's not really.
It says Stonington Gray on the palette.
It looks gray to me, but like I said, maybe I'm not seeing it. But if I looked at, when I was driving around there today, including looking at some of the, like I mentioned the Panera Bread building, they're in more of a brownish, beige kind of tone. It's warmer earth tones. And that, to me, is more blending in with the environment. So I just was trying to understand, when he said go away from gray, why we're still at gray.
So I had a follow-up to that, if I may.
Go ahead.
You're retaining the existing brick wall.
Yep.
Is that where is that? Is that
It's
what's being painted
at the base.
Stonington gray on this color scheme, or I don't see any brick on this color scheme?
It's the brick material goes up to the top of the windows, from the base to the windows. It's hatched with a brick pattern.
Okay, so is that being painted this Stonington gray?
Correct.
Okay. did you consider retaining the existing color? And the reason I ask is that in Mr. Cannon's report, there are some photographs of recent prototypes that have brick, looks like, if not natural brick, it's somewhat natural in color, similar to what you see on the wall here. And then you also have one on the right, which has more of a, it looks like more of a yellow with a little bit more brown tones in it on the bottom right. Were those colors considered, or did you provide these photographs to Mr. Cannon? And are they consistent with what you're designing here?
Right. The existing brick color, if I'm not mistaken, is close to the shade of cream and gray. So we just really just stuck to that color palette and not really veer away from that existing color.
Commissioner Hanson.
Maybe one thing that might help for us to really understand how this would look is if you could point to any other examples of McDonald's, like the pictures we got in this report that have this kind of gray tone and this look as well. Because, you know, the pictures we got that are in the architect's report aren't, you know, we're not able to say this looks like similar to that. And I know McDonald's is, you know, important about branding and everything. I would think that if this was a design that was you know, popular with McDonald's, there would be other McDonald's with this. And I know Los Gatos is unique, but I would think there would be other things that would be somewhat similar color and look-wise. Do you have anything like that to show us?
I don't have that right now, but I can for sure submit something to the staff for you to look at. Too.
Okay, that would help. And Vice Chair, if I could, I had another question.
Yes, go ahead.
You had, from the consulting architecture report till this proposal, you're adding in the outdoor seating with the trellises and everything. And although I can see on SP 1.0 that there are sketches of them there, it's hard to imagine what they look like. And the drawing, the first page drawing sketch that we have doesn't have any pictures of the outdoor seating or the trellises or anything like that. And further, it mentions something about trellises over the windows and doors. Yeah. And maybe you could help explain where those are.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because it's a flat drawing or something.
I have a cut sheet of the proposed, I have to actually here.
Sorry, you can use that projector if that's helpful.
I have a couple of samples. I can pass it over.
Look like we're going to get that working. Pass that around while we're waiting to see whether that works. The advantage of the overhead is that the public gets to see that as well. So thank you for your indulgence there.
Yep. Actually, I only brought one copy.
You use that copy.
Sorry, you can stand there if you take the microphone if you'd like. put that on the projector.
So this is what we're proposing in terms of the outdoor furniture to the rear of the building. And the layout is, you could see that on the site plan. The shade structure that I'm talking about is this number 8 and 9. It is bolted to the slab over the chairs and tables. And they're just like the canopies and trellis, they're made of steel. And the inset, they could be different colors too. That brings back to your point of making it, to giving it more color. The gray inset matches the gray paint proposed on the exterior of the building.
Commissioner Hanson?
Okay, so that gives me an idea about the canopies. There's also a mention of canopy or trellis over the windows.
Yeah.
And so is that this white line that we see here? I mean, what?
Correct. So the canopies are these over the windows.
And what is the width of the canopies?
3
You know,
feet.
coming out.
Yeah. 3
3
feet.
feet coming
Correct.
out from the building.
From the exterior wall. Yeah.
Okay, and it's just a flat canopy in a
Yep.
different shade.
Correct.
Okay,
It's
and
white metal.
And it's made out of metal.
Correct.
Okay.
Are there other questions? Since we have had no public comment, there is the opportunity for the applicant to make another statement or to use the time for 5 minutes, if you'd like, before we close.
I can make a closing statement.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for all your comments. Most of them we addressed with several rounds of revisions with the planning staff. But to summarize the design intent, we are enhancing the customer dining experience by updating the finishes and furnitures inside the restaurant. We are also modernizing the food ordering and service by installing order kiosk. But more importantly, we are enhancing the building exterior since it is the first one to greet customers. The building design complies with the town's design guidelines by proposing a simpler, more readable massing that has clean architectural elements such as the roof lines and wall-mounted trellis canopies. The neutral design and light gray color palette make it compatible with the surrounding buildings. The existing brick wainscot remain adds material variety and relates the building back to the neighborhood of Los Gatos. The design features mentioned do not impose corporate architecture, but allows the building to blend well with its neighbors.
Okay, thank you. There's one more opportunity for commissioners to ask questions before we close the public hearing. I did have one, and that was one of the requirements is that the architecture conform, and there's a strong encouragement of a unique Los Gatos scale and character, and I'm emphasizing the word character.
Yep.
So could you just kind of make the case a bit about character or address the way in which you feel that this project addresses local character of the town?
Yeah. First of all, there was a mention in the staff comments that how it relates back to the surrounding neighborhood, residential neighborhood, and we tried to keep the existing windows as is and put canopies and trellis over it to provide character, as well as keeping the brick wainscot to give it material variety, and also keeping the outdoor seating on the outside, on the rear side of the building, so that it will encourage human activity and interactions, just like what the existing town feels like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we will now close the public portion of the public hearing and ask if any commissioners have questions of staff, wish to comment on the application, or introduce a motion for consideration by the commission. Commissioner Birch.
I would like to make a couple comments if that's acceptable to the chair.
Absolutely.
In the recent months, I think that we have seen a number of applications for this this particular area of Los Gatos Boulevard. Sorry, it's a lot to say this time of day. And I think that we all need to recognize that in this vicinity, there are buildings that are all reaching a certain age, and we're going to begin seeing them begin to get refreshed, correct? However, in taking a look at this particular application, and I believe we saw Rotten Robbie a month or so ago, plus what we saw in front of CDAC today, I'm seeing a trend in leaning towards a very modern, almost non-characteristic style that really concerns me. No matter what part of town it is, it's still Los Gatos, and there's still a very distinctive way that Los Gatos views every property. And if you look in the very close vicinity of this property, you'll see that there are, aside from one building, all pitched roofs. They all fall into a tan beige type color that blends perfectly with the very mature vegetation around them. There's not a lot of metal used. There's a lot of wood used. I live close enough by. I walk by this property often, and I feel that I fully understand that a large business like McDonald's has a programmed branding they are leaning towards, and I have sympathy towards the applicant who is basically hired to roll this program new branding out. However, when you move into a community such as Los Gatos or other smaller, very detail-oriented communities, unfortunately that branding doesn't always work. And that's how I feel about this application. I couldn't support this as it is. I feel that it does not blend in with the character of the immediate neighborhood, or I think with the overall vision for Los Gatos Boulevard. It has a much more boxed facade than leaning sympathetically towards the angles of the buildings adjacent to it and the mature vegetation. Again, I fully understand that it is a roll-out branding, but as we have had this conversation with other large chain stores, I feel if they are in Los Gatos, they need to be a little bit more sympathetic to our requirements.
Yeah, go to Commissioner Badami next.
I echo Commissioner Birch's comments along with the town architect's comments. I don't see the rich architectural fabric that we like to see for Los Gatos. I don't see the interesting details. I don't see the high level of design quality, and I don't see any unique Los Gatos character in this design. So I could not support it as well. And the color also, I just don't find it characteristic of Los Gatos. I think something more along the lines of the palette that you see at Cornerstone and Leicester Square, the white creamy palette, is far more welcoming.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Janoff?
Yeah, similar comments to our fellow commissioners. The one thing I would comment on are the examples that were provided in the consulting architect's report really show the town of Los Gatos what potential designs could be brought forth that are not just cookie cutter boxes. And it strikes me that what's being proposed is probably the simplest, probably the most cost effective, but to blend in with more character in Los Gatos, I would like to see a more articulated design, something that uses wood perhaps along the lines of some of the other properties along Los Gatos Boulevard, and just has a little bit more more character to it.
Commissioner Hanson?
One of the reasons I asked if there was other McDonald's like this is because in our consulting architect's report, as Commissioner Janoff mentioned, there's examples of some other buildings, and you look at that and you're like, well, yeah, I could see that in Los Gatos, or I could see that with some modifications in Los Gatos. And I think I agree with other comments made by the other commissioners. I'm looking for something that I can compare it to. It doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be copycat, but I'm looking for something that says, yeah, this is like something in the same style or same range of style as something else in Los Gatos. And And I'm going to bring up again the shopping center that's just down the street at Lark and Los Gatos Boulevard is relatively new. And we do acknowledge that it's totally, appropriate. It makes sense for McDonald's to continually refresh its image. There's an example of a fairly new building down there that's in the nice creamy tones that has architectural interest. They have brick, they have wood trellises, not metal ones. And it looks like it fits in and it looks welcoming. And I think what we're all trying to say is that this seems fairly stark and modern, and we're trying to find that it's something that would make it complying with our commercial design guidelines. But our consulting architect did point out several things, and I'm not sure that the changes that have been made bring it into compliance with the commercial design guidelines.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add a couple of comments. Historically, when McDonald's came into Los Gatos Boulevard, there actually was quite a debate. It's quite some time ago, but I still think some of the foundations of the community still prevail. And so the result was, when you look at the existing building, it's an out-of-date building, but it was a relatively subdued and I would say sort of a moderate version of McDonald's for its time. And we won't get into signage here because that's not within our purview, but in terms of the architecture itself, I would just suggest, should this move forward or not move forward, that in considering how to be compatible with the neighborhood, to think a little bit about that experience of this being a somewhat subdued and one that integrates well into the boulevard. So with that, I'm going to ask whether one of the commissioners would like to make a motion. Commissioner Birch?
Sure, I will. I'm going to move to deny architectural and site application S-18-032 at 15475 Los Gatos Boulevard, APN number 424-19-065, for the many reasons cited by my fellow commissioners. Staff, do I need to repeat those? You both look like you were taking a lot of notes, so.
No, that's fine.
And I'm also going to add to my comments the absolute necessity for either up-to-date drawings provided to the commission for an application, particularly when you're dealing with customer-facing site, that there is a rendering or a photo showing perhaps an existing location that has a similar condition.
Commissioner Badami?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. In favor of the motion? Opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0, with no abstentions. So that's that item. Mr. Paulson, are there appeal rights regarding this item?
There are, thank you. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. Forms are available in the clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to the last, which is other business. Mr. Paulson, do you have a report from the Director of Community Development?
So Council, since your last meeting, met, and at their last meeting, they accepted a civil grand jury response that the town had to prepare dealing with the affordable housing crisis. And so the town prepared responses to a number of comments and recommendations, and that was accepted by the council. They also heard the Roshan Terrace appeal. They granted that appeal and approved the project. And then lastly, there were a couple minor modifications they ultimately approved for the North 40 specific plan amendments, which generally allowed the ability to do plan developments as well as development agreements.